Good day, good week, and welcome inside the Red Mile Rundown, episode 29. Glad to be back with you this week for another good Flames chatter episode filled with lots and lots of playoff chatter. We'll get into that in just a second here. Of course, I am Johnny Stope, the host of the show. Alongside me, as always, co-host Robert Munich. Robert, how are we today?
I'm doing good. Had a good weekend. Vladdy signed with the Blue Jays. Pumped about that. Zayne Perahk's looking like he's going to be up with the Flames. So, things are looking pretty good right now.
Now, if we're going to get into baseball, I'll talk about Bobby Witt Jr. all day as my Royals are off to a decent start. The Flames had a pretty interesting week. They didn't get anyone signed or anything like that, but hey, they had some playoff chase, some playoff conversations, some playoff games to play here. What'd you make of the week that was around the Flames?
Yeah, I mean, you got to give them credit. This team, they do play very hard. I mean, that's one thing that you got to give Ryan Huska credit for. You got to give the team credit for. And, you know, when you view this season from like a micro perspective, or you view this season in a vacuum, you know, you take out kind of all the outside noise, you take out all the long-term chatter, and you just look at this season for the Calgary Flames. And I think you have to be pretty happy with what's gone down just in terms of overall expectations heading into the year, and the fact that they're, you know, competing the way they are. They're getting the goaltending that they are from Dustin Wolf. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are lots of positives when you look at just this season alone. When you take into consideration the long-term view of things, yeah, obviously things aren't looking great in terms of losing your first-round pick and not making the playoffs. But, you know, at the same time that they're playing hard, like the win against Anaheim, they worked their balls off in that one, and they played really well against Vegas. You know, they had a rough first period, but you know, periods 2 and 3 in overtime, they worked really hard, and they looked pretty solid. I mean, like, you know, Vegas, they're arguably the best team in the Western Conference, and the Flames, you know, they were right there with them for most of the night. So, you know, you can't fault them for the effort. You know, you got to give them kind of credit for that and a little bit of respect for that. But, you know, when it comes to the playoff race, they needed points, and they didn't get any against Utah. They only got one against Vegas. You know, we go back to the week prior to that. They lose a point in Edmonton when they had a lead. They don't get the 2 points. What was that other game there? They don't get the 2 points against Dallas, right? They played really, really well against Dallas. So, yeah, man, it's tough. I mean, it's been a decent stretch of hockey, but at the same time, they're not picking up the points that they need to in order to kind of stay in this playoff race.
Yeah, for sure. You go back to when the calendar flipped and we were in January there, it was very evident the Flames were going to be in this playoff chase probably to the very end. A lot of these games, they were in these games. Even when they started slow, they would have had a good finish or vice versa. So it was very evident this team was always going to be pushing for the playoffs. And they put themselves in a good position heading into April to be in that wild card chase and to be where they are right now. Unfortunately, the Blues got on a roll. The Wild seem to be picking up enough points that the Flames just aren't getting enough at the end of the day here. So the efforts are there every night. We saw it against the Avalanche. They were able to come back. We saw it against the Knights where they held in there, as you mentioned it. Played a really good game against teams they have to beat, like the Anaheim Ducks. And they've got the same opportunity this week with San Jose and Anaheim coming up. They just weren't able to get these games over the finish line and collect points for their playoff push here. For me here, the overtime dropping of all these overtime points, that's 13 overtime or shootout games where they failed to get 2 points, I think is a big, massive reason why this team finds themselves where they are in this playoff chase. But you got to give the team a lot of credit for the way they have competed each and every night in these games here. I just really wish this team was able to find a way to put teams away when they had the opportunity to, as they just let these teams hang around when they have a lead and they consistently play from behind. So these little things here that the Flames are doing in this playoff race are good experiences for these guys. Now the math isn't going to look great for these Flames, and the chances are they aren't going to make the playoffs, but it's a good learning experience for the younger players on the Flames roster to be where they are in this playoff chase, to be part of these meaningful games. And what more can you ask for than watching the Flames play meaningful games with young players in the lineup down the stretch here, Robert?
Yeah, I mean, and you're getting solid contributions from some of them too, right? I mean, obviously Dustin Wolf's going to be nominated for the Calder and he should probably finish, at least second. Matt Coronato's having a really nice first full season, and man, he scored that spectacular goal against Vegas on Saturday.
So good.
That crazy good snapshot that he has, like it's awesome. Kevin Ball, I think, we've talked a little bit about Kevin Ball recently, and I think he's been a revelation this season. I think he's just been fantastic when you consider the expectations for him coming into the year. And, he's pretty much blown all of the expectations out of the water. He's been really, really good. And, you got guys like Connor Zary, and now Adam Klapka's starting to have, a little bit more of a consistent impact for this team. And, could he be a potential fourth line player for, the next few years in Calgary? Same goes for Martin Pospisil. He's not putting up the points that you're kind of hoping for from a guy like him, but at the same time, I think he had like 11 hits on Saturday. Like he's still a really effective player, an effective forechecker. So yeah, I mean, you're happy to see that these young guys are getting this type of experience. It'd be really interesting, like say at this time next year, or 2 or 3 years down the road, you ask all these young guys, like that experience from the 2024-25 season, like when you guys were kind of in the mix for a playoff spot, like how did that help you now? I think it'd be really interesting to hear their perspective on that, because you always hear that, like, when it comes to the Flames and their retool, they want to stay competitive. They want to play in meaningful games all the time because it's great experience for the young players. And, it'd be really interesting to hear what they have to say about that, because, it almost feels like a bit of a media driven narrative that, oh, you got to give them this experience and it's great for the young players. But then you also, at the same time, you wonder, like, the Flames, sure, they've been in the mix, but over the last 2 weeks with St. Louis flying ahead of them, it has not looked good. Like their playoff chances are pretty slim right now. So like, is this experience like really that beneficial to the point where you don't want to do a rebuild and bottom out? It's kind of an interesting thing to think about, but in the grand scheme of things, yes, you're happy to see young players make an impact at this time of year for sure. I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, and I think it's also a good thing for these veterans. Like you see a lot of veterans going down the stretch. Go watch yourself a Chicago game or a team like that, and you watch these veterans almost seemingly going through the motions of these games. So I think it's really kept your veterans in the mix, in the mindset of pushing for the playoffs as well, being in these games, which again, I think helps your young kids out. So I think it's beneficial for all these players to be in meaningful games. Nobody wants to play a slog over the last, 20 games of their season, knowing that it's not going to go anywhere. That doesn't seem fun. That's what you're asking in a full-on tank rebuild that some of these people want. You're asking your team just to play awful hockey down the stretch here. So it is fun watching this game, watching the Flames each and every night. But knowing that there might be playoffs at the end of the road. Put the draft pick aside for right now. That's an entirely different conversation. But have your team, if you were to tell any Flames fan that come the last 2 weeks of the season in April, your team's going to be playing meaningful games with an opportunity, no matter how slim it is, to make the playoffs, I think a lot of fans would be, yes, playoff hockey. You want playoff hockey. You want to be involved in these really important games down the stretch. And yeah, it is very slim for the Flames. The air of margin now for St. Louis is 1 win. The air for margin against Minnesota isn't much better. It's like you're really hoping these teams almost lose out and you can win out to make the playoffs. But it's still exciting to be in these games and to watch this team battle each and every night, because they don't quit. That's the one thing I've noticed about this team is we both have said at times this season that this team isn't good enough. They aren't good enough. They're not good enough to be a Stanley Cup contender. They're not good enough to make a deep playoff run, but they're fun to watch. And they might have at times it looked like be able to scrape into the playoffs and give the team an opportunity to play a series of playoffs. And we all would love to watch playoff hockey. So it's nice to watch. It's nice that the Flames are in these games. It's nice that they have the opportunities ahead of them here. It's a massive week here. By the time you're listening to the podcast here, folks, they would have already played the San Jose game. The Anaheim game is on deck on Wednesday, and a very important game on Friday. So the path is still there for the Flames. It is bleak, but right now, the big picture look that I'm taking is it was fun to watch this team in meaningful games in April with an opportunity to reach the goal that they had set out, which was a playoff spot here. Anything else from you, Robert, from this playoff chase here before we dive into some other conversations here? Because it's been quite interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean,
wild card battle here. Do you have anything else to add here?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it is exciting to watch these games with something on the line. At the same time, though, like when you do take a big picture look at this team, like this was not the year for them to be in this position. This is the type of year that you want your team to have after like 2 or 3 years of kind of like a bottoming out rebuild. Like you want to see your team, say 3 or 4 years from now, this is when you want them to kind of take that next step and start making the playoffs. Because right now, the Flames, realistically, I mean, they should be in asset accumulation mode. They should be doing their best to build up that next core group of players that are going to bring them to the promised land. And I think the way that you acquire the elite talent of that core is through the draft. I mean, I've mentioned that a lot of times. I still believe it today. But, the reason the Flames are good this year is because you're young goaltender. Yep. So that's the part of this season that is exciting. It's that, when you are building that elite core, they have a foundational piece now in Dustin Wolf. And, at the young age of 23 years old, he's already proved that he has the potential and likely will be an elite goaltender in this league, which is very exciting. At the same time, you need to put together a young core in front of him that's going to kind of grow and develop together. And by the time you're in that new building, can maybe start to take some pretty serious, significant strides towards becoming a contending team. So, it's tough. It's tough to evaluate this year because, like I said, when you view it from a macro perspective, it's not great. When you view it from a micro perspective and you just hone in on the year, it has been encouraging. It's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to know what to think about this season, at least for me. At least that's kind of how I feel about it.
Dustin Wolf, I don't want to say ruin the plans of the Flames this season, but when you have a guy that is a rookie goaltender, ruin the plan, but he really did take it upon himself to be the best version of himself and to pull this team along. And so this team really caught something that they weren't expecting to catch this year with what Dustin Wolf has been doing. And it's full credit to the 23-year-old netminder for the season he's put together. As you mentioned, it's Calder worthy, especially being a candidate for that trophy here. And he's really allowed the Flames then to focus their efforts elsewhere, because finding a goaltender is not easy in this league. Absolutely. We know that. If anyone is a Flames fan, it was Vernon, it was Kiprusoff, it's Markstrom, and a bunch of other dudes in the history of this organization that really haven't done much for the Flames. Dustin Wolf looks to be that next guy. The big question around Dustin for me now is, does Dustin Wolf's season, what he's provided for the Flames, what he's doing for the Flames right now, does Dustin Wolf change the long-term plan or the long-term outlook for you, Robert?
No, I don't think it does. I mean, like I said, it's fantastic that they found this piece. It's fantastic that he's having the year that he is. At the same time, you got to be able to put a legit Stanley Cup caliber team in front of him, right? Like, I mean, if you go back and take a look at past Stanley Cup champions here in kind of the modern NHL, how many of them were just simply won on the back of a goaltender? I would argue pretty much none. I mean, you had teams with very good goalies in, the Kings with Jonathan Quick, the Tampa Bay Lightning with Andrei Vasilevsky, the Panthers with Bobrovsky. Like you've had some Stanley Cup champions with really good goaltending. At the same time, though, they had very, very good teams in front of them. Like those Kings teams were dominant. The Tampa Bay Lightning teams in front of Vasilevsky were dominant and had a ton of star players, had a ton of elite talent. So just to think that the rebuild can be expedited and that you can start to take shortcuts because you do have a goalie, I think is completely ridiculous. And I if I'm the Calgary Flames, I absolutely do not take that approach. I continue to stay patient. I continue to want to rebuild. I continue to want to build through the draft and just take it slow, because I don't think you can build a Stanley Cup contender over the course of 3 years. Like, I just think that's insane. Especially when you take a look at the Flames prospect system, like who are the elite guys? Who are the surefire elite guys? It's Dustin Wolf and it's hopefully Zayne Perahk, and we'll see about Zayne. So they got to continue to build. I in no way, shape, or form should they be taking the next step in their process only because of Dustin Wolf. That's kind of the way I see it. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Like, They have found one of the two hardest pieces to find, in my opinion, when you're trying to build a team: a number one center and a goaltender. They have the goaltender now. What you're hoping now is that Dustin Wolf can continue to perform, continue to excel in what he's doing, and continue to be the best version of Dustin Wolf. But at the same time, that shouldn't affect your plan to go out there and find yourself a right-handed center that fits your organization, to go out there and build that defense around a young Zayne Perahk and whoever else you deem has the future of that blue line. It shouldn't take away from your plan of, if it was to trade away a Coleman or a Kadri or an Anderson this offseason for assets. It shouldn't change your plan. It can speed it up a little bit because goaltenders are hard to find, but they're also fickle. We could see Dustin Wolf come back down to earth next year, and if you're trying to push a rebuild forward and say we're done, just because you had one good season of Dustin Wolf, I think is also fool's errand as well. Stick to your plan, stick to your guns here, and continue the process. We've seen the Flames try to chase success before. We go back to 2014-15, that miracle season, and they had a nice little playoff there. They started chasing the seasons after that, and we never got back to that type of success. Just continue to build it, continue to stick with it. You still have to find that number one center. You still have to find that who's going to pair with Zayne Perahk down the line if these guys develop how you think they're going to develop. Very much in the camp of stick with your plan and build, and don't just chase a little bit of success just because you found something. We've seen it before and it doesn't work. We've seen it in the Flames organization multiple times, and each time we try to chase something, you fall flat on your face. You mentioned Zayne Perahk. I mentioned Zayne Perahk. Zayne Perahk's team has been eliminated in the OHL playoffs. His season has come to an end. He did some remarkable things for the Spirit in the OHL. Some record-setting things that we have not seen for a long time. He's a very special player at the junior level. So the conversation now with his season over has switched over to, when are the Flames bringing him in and how quickly can we get him into the lineup? That's what Flame fans are wondering right now. If you're in charge, Robert, how fast are you getting Zayne Perahk to Calgary and into the lineup in a Flames uniform?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you put it that way, because there's, what would I do and kind of what would the fan base do? And then there's what's Ryan Huska going to do? And I think the answer to those two things is two completely different answers. Like if it were up to me and I would say the overwhelming majority of the fan base, I think everybody wants to see Zayne Perahk in the Flames lineup, maybe as soon as Wednesday or Friday. Maybe you might want to get him a few practices in before you throw him in the NHL lineup. But I think you want to get him in as soon as possible. I mean, just, in my opinion, you're not touching the top two pairings. Anderson, Ball, I know they haven't been great, but you're not touching them. Hanley and Weegar have been your best pairing for, over half the season now. Mm-hmm. You're not touching them. So it comes down to the third pair, and it's, do you want Zayne Perahk on the right side, or do you want him on the left side? I personally want him on the right side. I don't think you should throw a rookie into games at the end of April on his offside. Like I think that's putting way too much pressure, and you're basically changing his game in order just to sit Jake Bean. So if they're up to me, I would have Perahk in the lineup as soon as possible. Maybe not tonight. Mm-hmm. Like say Perahk join the Flames today. Don't put him in tonight, but maybe as soon as Wednesday in Anaheim, get him in the lineup, take out Braden Pahal. Pahal, he has not been good lately. He has really, really struggled. He's been a regular healthy scratch. He's making lots of mistakes. He's not quite as physical as he was earlier in the year. I don't really like where his game is trending right now. And getting Zayne Perahk in over him, I think Perahk has the potential to be a difference maker. Like what does this Flames team struggle to do? They struggle to move the puck. They're not a creative team. They're not a great team on the power play. They struggle to score goals and make plays in the offensive zone. Mm-hmm. What can Zayne Perahk do to help that? Everything. Zayne Perahk's game is suited perfectly to help exactly what this Flames team needs right now. It's so obvious to me that he should be in the lineup over a guy like Pahal. It'd be almost kind of mind numbing to hear Ryan Huska say we don't want Perahk in the lineup during this playoff chase when we're playing meaningful games. It's like how risk adverse is this team? Like you really think Braden Pahal is going to be over Zayne Perahk is going to be the difference between you potentially making the playoffs or not? Give me a break. Come on. But we all know that's exactly what Ryan Huska is going to say. So yeah, man, if it were up to me, 100% Zayne Perahk is in the lineup. He's even at 19 years old and he hasn't played an NHL game. He's still already a better hockey player than Braden Pahal is. So yeah, 100% he's getting in the lineup for sure.
We think he's getting in the lineup, but I think the Flames are really approaching this with while we're in the race, we can't play these guys because we've seen it before. This is what this organization does. We're seeing it with Suniev. We're still going to see it with Perahk. I firmly believe it. And I think it's wrong because the one thing we continually talk about when we talk about the Flames this year is the lack of skill. Is where is the skill for this organization? They need to find some more skill. You have this kid who has done nothing but go out every day for Saginaw and show off his skill. Skill plays, doing what he does best, shooting that puck, moving it, skating well. And he's been a much better defender this year than a lot of people were giving him credit for heading into the draft. So he's worked on all aspects of this game. Yes, the OHL to the NHL is a massive jump, and you're playing against men, not boys. But at the same time, when you have the raw skill and the raw charisma that Zayne Perahk brings to the lineup, he was there in training camp. He played in training camp. He knows what it takes to play at this level. Why not put him in there? You have two guys on the right side in front of him in Anderson and Weegar to help insulate him. You could really pick his minutes in the offensive zone. You can do a lot of things that to help this guy be successful in an NHL debut a few games here. So why not play him? Why not put him in there? Because you mentioned Bean and Pahal and Miromanov haven't exactly been banging the door down with opportunities to be successful in the National Hockey League and to push this Flames team over the edge. You have your big minute-eating defenseman to do that. Zayne Perahk in the lineup for me makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and you made a good point there. You're like, this is like what the Flames do. And I think what you're referring to is when they had Matt Coronato up, when they signed him in the 2022-2023 season. They signed him and then he sat for, I think it was like 5 or 6 games. And they refused to play him when they were in the middle of a chase for a playoff spot. And I think that backfired on them because like you take a look at, so remember that game against Nashville, the Nick Ritchie shootout game?
Oh gosh, yes.
So that night, Matt Coronato and Jacob Pelche were in the stands. On the Flames roster that night were Nick Ritchie, Milan Lucic, Trevor Lewis, and Walker Dewar. You're telling me that those 4 players gave you a better chance to win than Matt Coronato and Jacob Pelche, even though they both lacked NHL experience at that time? Like, come on, like give me a goddamn break. Like, you're telling me that guys like Aidar Suniev and Zayne Perahk aren't better players than Braden Pahal, Jake Bean, Daniil Miromanov, and then for Suniev, like I would argue that Suniev's been a way better player or has the potential to be a way better player than Ryan Lomberg right now. I think I would almost make an argument that he could be potentially better than Yegor Sharangovich right now. I don't think it's crazy to say that Suniev could actually make an impact in the Flames lineup over those 2 players specifically. So they should be giving these guys a chance. They're in the middle of a rebuild. They're trying to, prioritize young players' development. What better way to, develop young players like Suniev and Perahk by putting them in games in April when they do matter and give them that taste like, hey, this is what, playoff quote unquote, like, playoff type hockey is all about. Get them in there and experience the speed, get them in there and experience the intensity. And then they can take all that sort of information that they collect and then put it into their off-season training and hopefully set themselves up for success early next season in training camp. So I think it's a no-brainer to get, honestly, even get Suniev in the lineup too. I think it's a no-brainer for both guys. Where do you stand on Suniev right now? Are you okay with them keeping him as a healthy scratch?
Yeah, I look at it this way. I look at it when you talk about bringing in a young player over a veteran. I'm like, could it be any worse? So Sharangovich isn't exactly lighting the world on fire. Yes, he has a shootout winner. Yes, he has a goal against the Oilers in the last week and a bit here. But if putting Suniev in there gives you 2 points over the course of 5 games, it's no worse than what you're getting from Sharangovich. It really isn't. He's a bigger body. He knows how to use his hands. He's got feet. He can play the game. He might not be this top 6 world burner right now, but the guy has potential to be there. And how do you get that potential out of him? You play him games. So I'm okay with him sitting for the first few days that he's around the Flames organization like he has been. I'm okay with him watching a few games from the press box, but now is the time to put him in there. He's watched it. He's up to speed here. He knows what's going on. He's got a smart hockey IQ, and he knows how to play the game of hockey. Put him out there, and you could do the same thing with Perahk. Limit his minutes to certain spots, offensive zone starts, insulate him beside certain guys you know that can handle the responsibility of having a rookie beside them. You can do a lot of things to help these kids get in there, get the experience, and once they have 2 or 3 games under their belt, these kids are going to want more. They're going to be hungry. They're going to be driven to continually be in this lineup. So you want the skill, you want your kids to play, then play them, put them in there. Because I look at it this way: you put Suniev in and you put Perahk in, is it any worse than if you continually dressed Sharangovich and Pahal? I don't think you're going to get much of a difference, because again, you need your big dogs to be pulling this team along this time of year. If you're trying to make the playoffs, you're not trusting your third pair defenseman or your fourth pair left winger to be the difference maker. If they contribute, terrific, but that's not who you're trying to be as your difference maker. You need your Andersons, your Uyghurs, your Kadris, your Hubertos, your Backlunds to be the drivers and to pull this team along if the playoffs is your goal. And whether you get there or not, I don't think it's going to be rested on the shoulders of a young Zayne Perahk. So put him in there, let him play, let him get accustomed to it, because what's the worst that can happen? You're going to miss. Well, the math right now suggests you're going to miss. So for me, it's all benefit, all reward, and very little risk to the organization right now with these guys in the lineup.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Like in the grand scheme of things, putting Perahk and Suniev in is not going to be the difference between you making the playoffs or not. Like you said, it's the big boys. It's the Uyghurs, it's the Hubertos, it's the Kadris. Those are the guys that are really going to drive the bus. But I think guys like Perahk and Suniev, they could add a little bit of juice to, for Perahk, a third defense pairing. Like that third pairing has been brutal for quite some time now. Like I'd say the last 15, 20 games, they've really, really struggled. Yegor Sharangovich has been terrible, basically all season. What's the harm in putting a guy like Suniev in for him? Like I think these guys could help be peripheral pieces, like kind of nice pieces that might be able to contribute every now and then. But I think they have the potential to do that over, the Pahals, Beans, and Sharangoviches of the world. So we all know though that Ryan Huska's not going to do that. Like that's just not Ryan Huska's thing. Ryan Huska hates taking risks. He hates players that do things that might lead to a turnover, something like that, even though it could lead to a goal. Like he is so risk averse as a coach, and I don't really blame him, because you take a look at the roster. I mean, this is not a good roster, right? So you want to be as smart as you can with the puck, but at the same time, like you got to score goals to make it, and they're not scoring goals right now. And who knows? Like Perahk, maybe putting Perahk in the line, that could lead to an extra goal or two between now and the end of the season. Could that be the difference between you making a true fight of it against Minnesota or not? I mean, who knows? I mean, with this team, goal scoring is at such a premium that even if you can get an extra goal created by a Perahk or a Suniev, make an extra goal or two, that literally could be the difference between getting a win or not in a couple of these games here. So once again, we'd all love to see it. Is it going to happen until they're mathematically eliminated? That's probably the case. That's probably what's going to end up happening here.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. And then one last thing here is you don't have to play these guys all 5 of the last games. You can give them 2 games each, and that's it. Like you don't have to play them every single night. And if you play these kids, I think it also sends a message to your veterans. Hey, there is kids here. There are guys pushing for your jobs. So keep them motivated as well. I think there's nothing but advantages for this, but we all know what the Flames are doing. Huska likes what he knows, and what he knows is a Bean Pahal third pairing. What he knows is Sharangovich on his second power play. That's the stuff that he knows and he trusts. He's much like Sutter in that way. He goes with what he knows and what he can trust. It's unfortunate, really, because you have these kids here with an opportunity here to get something out of them, to get their development going even further here. It'll be interesting to see how they handle here. Before we move on to the last topic here, I just wanted to ask you real quick. Jake Bean has been getting a lot of hate across social media, an absolute ton. That third pair has definitely struggled. But is the hate that Jake Bean gets, is it warranted in your opinion?
Okay. Yes and no. Okay, so here's how I would describe it. Kind of like just in our last conversation there, you were talking about it. It's the big boys that drive the team. So from that perspective, like Jake Bean is essentially the number 6 defenseman on this team, and a number 6 defenseman in the grand scheme of things is not going to have a huge difference on wins and losses for the Calgary Flames. So from that perspective, the criticism is probably a little harsh, but when you just take a look at the way he's played in his individual role, I don't think he's been good at all, especially the last like 30-ish games here. And the issue I have with Jake Bean is that I just don't know what he brings to the table. He's not overly offensive. Like I believe in his last 20 games, he's got like 1 or 2 points. So he's not an offensive driver. He's not like a great skater. Like he's fine. He's like an average NHL skater. He's not a great defender. He doesn't play physical. There's zero attitude, intensity, drive, anything like that you see from him. He's just like a very monotone kind of vanilla ho-hum guy. I don't know if, like what he's like in the locker room. I based off what I've seen, I don't think he's a member of the leadership team. So it's just like, you go through all that stuff and you're like, what the hell does this guy bring to the table? And really, it's not a whole heck of a lot. So yeah, I mean, I think the criticism of his game is totally warranted. When you play in the NHL, you're playing for a fan base that pays your salary. They're allowed to be critical of you, and they're allowed to have some harsh critiques if you're not playing well. And Jake Bean's not playing well right now. So yeah, like I said, in the grand scheme of things, is Jake Bean going to be the difference? Probably not. But at the same time, he's not playing well. He's playing, pretty underwhelming, below average hockey right now. And if I'm the Flames, I find a way to get rid of him in the offseason, whether it's you trade him for future considerations, you trade him for a minor league player. If those avenues don't work, maybe you look at a buyout, or you put him on waivers in training camp and you put him in the minors. Like between him and Daniil Miramanov, those two guys, they have to go. So yeah, I'm not impressed by Jake Bean's game. I don't think he's been very good this year, and I don't really want to see him back next year. That's how I'm feeling about Jake Bean.
He's been taking it in the teeth on social media. I just wanted to ask your opinion on that. I'm very much with you. What does Jake Bean do well? Well, he takes up a roster spot. That's what he does really well for me. And I wish there was a way to get the Calgary Hitman version of Jake Bean at the NHL level, because when he was playing in junior, he was incredible. But, that's not how it works in the grand scheme of things. Speaking of struggling, speaking of expectations, and speaking of taking it in the teeth a little bit on social media, it's been an interesting year for the Flames captain. There was the injury in there. There's the up and down play of it. It's time to have a conversation around Mikael Backlund and his future with the Calgary Flames. And I'm not saying just ship this guy out right now because we're done with him, but what do you make of Backlund? Are going to go with Mikael Backlund because he is the captain of this team and he is signed next year? What do we do with Mikael Backlund here?
I find it a difficult question to answer, because it's, what should you do with this guy? Do you want him to retire as a Calgary Flame? Do you want him to retire as the captain of the team? If that is the case, how many more years left does he have in his career? I would argue Backlund could probably be an effective player until he's 38, 39, maybe even pushing 40, just because of how smart he is and how well he understands the defensive side of the puck. I could see Backlund being, a solid fourth line center, well into his late 30s here. So for me, it's not like the on ice part of Backlund's game why I'm kind of having these sort of conversations or thoughts about Backlund's future. It's more just about like the culture of the team, and is it just time to maybe move on from Mikael Backlund and give the reins to a guy like Mackenzie Weegar? Like, I think Weegar is a slam dunk to be the next captain of the Calgary Flames, and with this new kind of young core with the rebuild, do you want to just maybe go in a different direction and have a different voice and a different leader, a different guy wearing the C and representing your franchise? Like, and then there's the whole other conversation, should a captain be one of your best players? In my opinion, I'm a believer that they should. I think they should be a go-to guy on the ice. And as Backlund continues to get older here, I think he becomes more of a complementary sort of depth piece. I think he becomes, a solid third line center for the next year or two. And then after that, he probably moves down to more of a fourth line role. And in my opinion, I think the captain of a team should be a guy that's like prevalent in the lineup, that's on the ice a lot, that plays an important role. So I look at a guy, once again, like Mackenzie Weegar. I think he'd be a perfect captain for this team. He's the number one defenseman. He plays the most minutes, toughest matchups, also just like phenomenal with the media. Fans love him. He's become, an integral part of the Calgary community here. Like, I just wonder, I've been thinking about it for like a couple weeks now. I'm just like, is it time to maybe move on from Mikael Backlund? Like, and if you're Michael, like, do you want to go chase a Stanley Cup, or do you want to have that sort of legacy of only playing with one team? Like, there's a lot to kind of consider here when it comes to Mikael Backlund. So overall, I haven't really made like a total decision on it yet, but the more I think about it, the more I'm almost thinking, maybe it might be a good idea just to let him go, chase a cup and honestly just kind of transition the leadership over to a new group of players for kind of a new era of Calgary Flames hockey. Like, I know he's been around a long time. He's very respected. He's done spectacular work in the community with his wife. I love all that stuff, but at the same time, all good things must come to an end. So, where do you stand on Backlund? Because I actually think it's like a pretty difficult conversation to have.
It's one of those legacy conversations, isn't it? Like, what do you want the legacy of Backlund to be? And unfortunately, no one ever really ends on their own terms. It's very rare that a guy gets to choose the end path, or the team gets to choose the end path for these type of relationships. We saw how Mark Giordano's time in Calgary ended in an expansion draft. Like, there's been a multitude of different ways that guys have left teams and organizations. But if you're going strictly from the on-ice portion of Mikael Backlund, what he's brought this season for what he can be has been only okay. It's not been Mikael Backlund level. He is slowing down a little bit, but he still can be an effective player. If in a perfect world, he would be a perfect fourth line center for a team that's rebuilding like the Flames are, bringing kids in that someone can learn from, and he can be a quiet leader for these guys. But at the same time, you don't want your captain to be your fourth line center. That just doesn't work really in the National Hockey League. So that brings up the Weegar conversation that you were having. Find somebody who is. Do you strip Mikael Backlund of his captaincy after you gave him that captaincy just this season? Like, so there's a lot of questions around Mikael Backlund. It's like, what do you want the legacy of Mikael Backlund to do? But then what is also the best for the Calgary Flames here? And like you mentioned, I'm there with you. I remember this guy coming into the league wearing number 10. He's going to help lead this franchise to what he is today as one of the best two-way centers in the league, a guy that should have got more Selke vote love over the course of his career maybe, and a guy who does a lot for the Calgary Flames. But you're trying to push forward here. You're trying to move forward. You're trying to play younger kids. You're trying to build a roster to push forward to be a playoff successful team. Can you do that with Mikael Backlund at the 3 center? I don't know if you can. I really don't know at this point anymore. This season would suggest you can't. The way that he's been playing has been only okay. The injury doesn't help, obviously, but do you find a way to put this guy in a situation somewhere else where he can chase that Stanley Cup? Does he even want that? Do you what is your plan then for replacing Mikael Backlund? Do you have someone in the organization that you can slot where Mikael Backlund is to help get those same minutes from it? Because he does a lot for this team as well. We have to remember that. So it's definitely a tough conversation for the Flames and for Mikael Backlund. He's signed next year for this on this team. And if he comes back and he plays for this team, I'm going to be happy to watch Mikael Backlund. He's one of my favorite players. But at the same time, you have to think, what's best for the Flames long term. And it might be time to move on from Mikael Backlund, as hard as that conversation would be to have with Mikael and with his wife and moving them along, because he's been a big part of the Flames for a ton of time here. He's put a lot of effort into this community and a lot of effort into the Flames here, but maybe it is time to move on, and maybe he's part of the off-season moves here for the Flames.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the decision kind of just comes down to what Backlund wants.
Yep.
Because he's only got the 1 year left on his deal.
Yeah.
So he could just play out the string here and just become an unrestricted free agent, and I think that would be fine. You have him around for 1 more year as captain. I don't know if you want to sign him to another deal. I'm not totally sure on that one yet. But if he comes to you and you're in your kind of year-end meeting with him, he says, hey, like, this year was great, we changed the culture, but at the same time, like, I don't see us being a cup contender for my last 2, 3, 4 years in the National Hockey League here. Like, I want to chase something, and I wouldn't blame him at all. If I were Backlund, I would absolutely probably, like, I would definitely want to get a trade out of Calgary just so I can go on a potential playoff run with somebody. And, I don't know how many teams can do that, because he makes $4.5 million, and that's a lot to be spending on a third, like a third line center on a good team. But like, if I were him, like, don't you want to go to a Colorado? Don't you want to go to a Carolina or a Florida? Like, what if the Panthers lose Sam Bennett this summer to free agency? Like, could the Panthers be a good spot for Backlund to play 3C and move Lundell up to 2C? Like, those are the kind of things that I'd be very tempted to explore if I was Mikael Backlund.
Yeah, I think I'm right there with you too. Like, there's lots of situations around the league that the Rangers are trying to redo some things. Like, the LA Kings could always use another center. Like, there are situations around this league that he could find himself in to be in an opportunity to go chase that success. Because frankly, he deserves some more playoff success. He deserves an opportunity to go chase a cup. He's been in this league a long time. He's been on a lot of murky middle peak pain Flames teams over the course of his time with Calgary, and he deserves an opportunity to go chase that if that's what he wishes to do. And it's really, what does he want? Because it's that legacy conversation, like I mentioned. What does Backlund want? How does he want to finish up here? Does he want to do what Jerome McGinley did and just jump around to a few teams trying to find the cup, or does he just want to stick it out and just be one of those guys who sticks it out to the end, like we see with Crosby in Pittsburgh, just going to stick it out to the end no matter what happens. And who knows? I don't think I'd give Mikael Backlund another contract either myself, but if he wanted to play next season as the Flames, so be it, right?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And, I'm just looking at his Hockey DB page right now, and over his, 1,060 regular season games, only 42 playoff games in his entire career. And according to Hockey DB, they have 10 in the 1920 season, the bubble. Like, I wouldn't even consider the bubble the playoffs. Man. So you take away the bubble, he's at 32 playoff games over 15, 16 seasons with the Flames, 17 seasons with the Flames, like 32 playoff games, like 32 real playoff games in front of people. Like, that's not enough. Like, that's crazy. And if I'm Backlund, I'm absolutely considering, like, yeah, I'll give you 5 or 6 contending teams that I'll go to, and let's get a trade done. And if the Flames don't get much back in return for him, I am personally okay with that, because this guy has given you his heart and soul for, like I said, 16, 17 years here. You don't need to cash in on a huge return for the guy. You can do the guy a favor and send him to a place where he has a chance to win.
Just one of many off-season storylines to definitely be keeping an eye on this off-season for the Calgary Flames, the future of Mikael Backlund. It'll be interesting to see how they work it out. Big week here for the Flames, Robert. They definitely got 2 big games before that meeting with Minnesota on Friday. Hopefully that means something if you're on team playoffs there. What are you looking forward to most this week, Robert, with the Flames here, with the opportunity in front of them? What do you expect from them? And then tell us, folks, what's coming up from you on your flamesnation.ca and whatever else they can find for you.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'd say the thing that excites me most is the idea of watching Zayne Perahk and watching Aidar Suniev. Even though if they do end up kind of getting out of the playoff race and they're mathematically eliminated. I'd also love to see Cairns get back in the lineup. I'd love to see Stromgren, guys like Solovyov, Brustevich, Grushnikov, just like a bunch of guys. Cooley, bring all those guys up and give them 3 or 4 games. Quite honestly, I'm kind of more excited about the young players and the idea of getting to see them than I am the playoff chase at this moment in time, just because the odds are so stacked against the Flames that I don't even know if it's worth getting your hopes up. Because I mean, the Flames essentially they have to go basically 5-1 or they have to go undefeated. And if they do go 5-1, one of the games they have to win is against Minnesota. And you take a look at the Minnesota Wild's schedule. They play the Sharks, the Ducks, Calgary, and Vancouver. And if the Wild get like 2 wins, it's basically over. And if they win one of those games against the Flames, it's over. So I'm just having a hard time kind of getting bought in and excited for the race. I'm more so excited to see what Zayne Perahk and Idar Suniev and others could potentially look at the NHL level. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Love to see some of the kids up. Like love to see this Flames team, and give them a little here. Has for the playoff chase. I'm not. I've been on it for a few weeks now. The math isn't great. It's just going to enjoy these last few games and hope that this team can find a way to play some really good hockey, entertaining hockey down the stretch here. And from Munich at Ring of Fire, CGY across your social media. I'm Vintage Johnny 84, and of course the show at Red Mile Rundown across wherever you do your posting. Thank you so much for making us part of your podcast rotations. Thank you for the likes and subscribe, and don't forget to continue to smash those 5-star ratings and reviews. Enjoy the games this week, folks. We'll talk to you next week here on the Red Mile.
Can you hear me?